posted a video last week where I spoke about the state of modern day masculinity and the role of Christian men in fixing that. And the natural next question to be asked is, how do I make a difference in my life? And without wasting your time, the answer is you find your calling as soon as possible. Now, community has a huge role in this, and I'll get into that just now, but finding your calling is imperative because it goes back to just natural masculine drives, right? As men, we're called to have a purpose, right? And I'm reminded again of a conversation I had with my friend last year when I was just struggling with, I guess, just being lonely and not having a girlfriend. And he spoke about the story of Adam, right? And he went to the passage where God is like, no, it wasn't that one. It was a passage where he said, it is not good for man to be alone. But he pointed out the fact that by the time God said that to Adam, Adam was living in his purpose, right? He was tending the garden. That was his purpose. He was busy naming all the animals and whatever it is, but he was living in his purpose. And that is a principle that rings ever true. It is evergreen, right? Men are made to have purpose and we're meant to drive towards something. I'll give you an example of a story I've heard before, right? Where there was this town of just depressed young men, right? Well, not young men, it was just depressed men in general, right? And they didn't really feel like they had anything to live for, like the town was just in chaos. And then all of a sudden, there was a fire that broke out in the town. And all of a sudden, like we needed ambulances, you need people to go out there and put the fires out, you need people to rebuild the houses, to save the cats from the trees, and all of these things, right? And well, who was doing all of this? Lo and behold, it was the men, right? All of a sudden, these men weren't like depressed anymore. They were up there doing stuff. And it just goes back to the whole idea of like men need purpose. And that's why we have I don't want to say we have the worst generation on the planet because that feels a little bit extreme, but we definitely have a very docile generation, and again, we pale in comparison to our ancestors' generations. Like if you look at the men of old, we pale in comparison. Like go back to the Roman Empire, right? Jesus' time, when Jesus was here, look at the men that were there, right? And you compare them to what we have now. We have men busy paying OnlyFans models $50 million in a year, right? Like, what on earth? How have we gotten here? How have we gotten here? Well, I know how we gotten here. I spoke about it in the last video. But as a man, you should feel embarrassed about that, and you should feel embarrassed about your part to play in that. I know we're young, we haven't been here very long, but like, we're part of the problem because we're not doing anything about it, right? We're not part of the people that are fixing the issue, right? And we're not being stand-up men in our lives, right? We're not doing as much as we could, and that's why it's important. It's very important for men to have calling, especially as Christian men. The world needs strong Christian men, right? Because strong Christian men were the ones. I mean, you look at all the stuff that happened in history. There was a lot of strong men for sure, but a lot of the major things we have nowadays were by strong Christian men, right? And if you look at what men were doing then and what men are doing now, it's just ridiculous. And I think as men, like we've got. Oh, there's so much potential. There's so much potential, and I've seen this. So I've seen this just growing up myself. Growing up and seeing how we got to where we are as a society in relation to masculinity, as getting up to like when Andrew Tate became popular, right? And you're seeing why he's becoming popular. Now, obviously, we reject his teachings. Well, say his teachings as if he's like a flipping rabbi or something, but like reject his nonsense, right? We reject the red pills nonsense and all that crap, right? We don't deal with carnal masculinity. We understand it's not the answer, right? But the reason he got so popular is because there's a bunch of young men who don't want to live the way feminists are telling us to live. We don't want to live the way this world is telling us to live, right? We actually want to go out there and do something with our lives. Now, when it gets channeled to an Andrew Tate, then we have a problem, right? Because now that energy is leading to 15-year-olds or going out there believing the things Andrew Tate is teaching, and it's like, that's just ridiculous, right? But there's also the huge groaning I felt myself. Like I saw this, I went through it myself. I was looking like what Andrew Tate was saying. I was like, this guy, he's nailing some things. He's got some wild takes, but he's nailing some things. But I looked at it and I'm like, this is something still very off about it, right? Because it's not biblically based. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like I want to come here and be like a stand-up Christian man. And I know there's a lot of Christian men out there looking for that. And I think we've got so much potential, so much to work with. God has given us all these talents, and I think I'm positive. I think we can definitely do a lot. But as I reiterated in the last video, that doesn't mean just men in general. Some men out there are gonna go out there and fix this. This means you, man of God, you, right? Because can't be looking around. Like, we've all been given gifts. You've been given spiritual gifts, whatever those are. We can speak about how you find those just now. But you are called to go out there and do something. And as I'm saying in this video, you have to go find out your calling. Now, I kind of figured out mine, our minors community. Like, I think I've noticed this thing we have a bunch of like young men who are, they're Christian, they're looking for Christian community, they're looking for like purpose and stuff to do in their lives. They're seeing the problems around the world, they're not happy about it, but they just don't quite have, that community, to help them. They don't quite have that guidance they need. They don't quite have that drive, there's just that brotherhood, right? And for me, that's what I feel called to, right? But you need to go find out what that is this year. And again, I can give you a list of all these things you can do, but honestly, the number one thing you can focus on, the number one thing I would implore you to focus on, is finding community. Why? Because as human beings, we are social creatures, and that rings true across the human population. We're social. Even people who are introverts or whatever it is, we cannot deny that when somebody we like, or somebody we feel inclined to hang out with, right, does something or says something that we resonate with, we're more likely to go and do that, right? The old joke of like your mom asking you, oh, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? And the sad reality of being a human is that you probably would. You would be more likely to jump off the bridge, right? Because your friends are doing it, right? You're much more likely to do daring things. Or I think of those memes of like, oh, you're not the most confident guy, whatever it is, but then all of a sudden when you're walking out in public with your friends, or you're walking out with your boys, like all of a sudden you feel like you can just do whatever, like your confidence just skyrockets because you're with your boys, right? Now, that's not, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think it's a good thing, right? It's a good thing God made us, social. I just spoke about how God said, it's not good for man to be alone, right? But I think that's what we're missing, right? We have a generation of depressed, isolated young men, right? And again, that analogy I just gave you, that story I gave you of like the men who are in the city, and they were all like depressed, but then all of a sudden, there was fires, and they needed a strong man to go out there and do stuff, right? Same thing applies. We have this generation of men who are disgruntled, they're depressed, they're lonely, they have no purpose in their life. And all I'm saying is the number one way you can get on the right path to fixing that is finding community, finding brotherhood. And I'm reminded of what this pastor, Matt Chandler, is my favorite pastor. He spoke about how he believes it's imperative, it's important that every man, right, has 3 or 4 men that they walk through life with, that they can call brothers in Christ, right? That they tell about everything that's going on in their lives, that knows, like, dude, by the time you're like grown up and you've got like children and stuff, those men know what's going on, right, with your children. They know everything, and that's important. It's very, very important. I think if you can work on finding that this year, you'll be well on the path to actually going out there and figuring out your calling. Because honestly, like, you hang around with like friends who are Christian, and they're living lives, like you'll start to see certain people, you're like, oh, I don't really like this, or I like this, or whatever it is. But you start to see what people your age are doing, and you get encouraged to go out there and actually figure out what it is you're called to do. Or maybe you figure out something else, and then you have friends who encourage you to do that, or discourage you from doing it. But I think that's the number one thing. And I think just having a brotherhood, right? You start hearing all these people sharing about things they're doing, and it encourages you. It really does. It really, really does, right? Like, picture, okay, let me make it simple for you, right? Imagine you're living let's say you're living in this house. So you're living in a house with like 4 other guys, right? And they're Christians, they're the same age as you and whatever it is, and they're your best friends, right? And one of them, well, let's say all of them have decided, oh, we eat clean and we go to the gym, right? You're probably going to want to go to the gym as well, right? And if you're not, you better have a damn good reason, right? It might be like, oh, I go running or whatever it is. But either way, you're going to do that, right? And then you find out, oh, this one guy, he creates content. This other guy, oh, he's starting this business where he does this. This other guy, he's getting his degree in this or whatever it is, right? And it's like, you're not going to sit in that house by yourself and be like, oh, I'm not doing anything with my life, right? You're going to be encouraged to do something. You will be encouraged to do something, and you're gonna have, because you've got these brothers. You feel like, oh, they're doing this thing, I'm feeling called to go out there and do something else as well. And now you're on a walk with these people, and I think it's very important, and it's imperative that these are Christian, biblical men of God, right? Not just whatever, like, or just random men. Like, they better be like men of God, because these are people you're going through your life with. And I've spoken about this in a different video. I'll speak about it again in another video. But they're like 3 stages on your walk with God, right? The first stage is having your Bible. That's where you find out who God is. It's His inspired, revealed Word of God, right? Then the second stage is having a pastor pastor who interprets and kind of tells you like what he's been learning from like the passage and stuff, what he has to share with you, right? Somebody to interpret things, because you just don't have the context, you don't have the theological knowledge or the wisdom to interpret certain things, right? You just don't. And the third aspect is community, right? And what community helps you with is application, right? It helps you with application, and it's so simple. I was chatting with my one friend last year. We were just sharing, like, we both work at like the same place, right? We're doing like articles in accounting, and I was just complaining. Well, not complaining. I was just sharing how I'm like really struggling with something, and he kind of just shared with me how he's struggling with the same thing. And immediately that made me feel better. But then also it was a thing of like pointing out that being a Christian doesn't mean things are going to be easy, right? It doesn't mean things are going to be easy. But the thing is that God is with you through that difficulty. And I'm like, of course, I know that. I literally, like, I've been learning this in like the last like month or so. Like, it's ingrained in me. The gospel doesn't call it, no, the gospel isn't that your life will get easier. The gospel is that Jesus is with you throughout those difficulties. I know this, but I just failed to apply it to my own situation. And my friend helped just realign my thoughts in that way. He reminded me of something I already knew, and that's the importance of community. But if you are looking for community, if you want someone to start now, I would think I'll make a whole different video on this, but just start by going to your to connect groups. I think that's the cheat code. Going to church connect groups, especially if you're in a big city, it's so nice. Like, there's so many churches, right? You can go to like connect groups and you meet people there. Like, you literally just meet people there and you start just building community. Obviously go to church and stuff, but you want to go to connect groups particularly, or gatherings where it's like young people, young adults connect groups, whatever it is, right? That's where I find I've met people young adults connect groups, because you got other Christian people looking to meet other Christian people, right? Also, just a bonus, if you can find your wife there, that would be wonderful. But I think in relation to like finding friends and community, that's the best way you can start. But also, we have an online Discord where I'm working really hard to like build this. I want to build an online community of just young men like you, who are Christian, looking for friends, looking to figure out their way in life, and move forward, right? The Discord is linked in the description below. We have connect groups on Mondays and Saturdays. You'll find the times. It'll be up on my like Instagram story, and yeah, we announce it as well. But like, it's a good place to start. Online, you're meeting like-minded Christian friends as well. I think that's a nice alternative for whatever reason. You're not in a city where you can go out there and make friends, whatever it is, or you're feeling shy, whatever it is. But I think it's a nice place to start. So if you are interested, you can join that. Also, hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys.